A large percentage of central bankers are saying we are going to hold the gold inside our own borders, not in someone else's country. So this is pretty big. And of course, no surprise here, a relatively small reliance on paper gold. Hello, GoldSilver family. Alan Hibbard here with another video. And today I want to talk about some developments that are happening globally and the global balance of power, particularly as it pertains to the BRICS economic union and the balance of power with the West. So let's get into it. First of all, I have something here from BRICS News on Twitter. And here we have the World Bank upgrades Russia to high-income nation. High-income nation, Russia, estimating its gross income per capita at $14,250 annually. This comes just 2 years after the West imposed sanctions. Additionally, Russia now has the largest GDP in terms of purchasing power parity in Europe. Wow, so a few notable things here. First of all, we have the West imposing sanctions. So the West, the US and its allies, basically the number one superpower, economic superpower and military superpower. Those two are linked. Imposing sanctions. So what are sanctions? Basically, one country is saying to another country, hey, you can or can't do something with your resources. Okay, you either have to do something a certain way or you're not allowed to do something at all. And if you violate our rules, we'll use our resources to further restrict your resources, or we'll use our resources to destroy your resources or to seize them. So this is really a battle of resources. Who controls more resources and who is going to dictate how they're used? That is sort of what's at play here. And it plays out globally, just like it happens within a certain country, it happens between them. So just 2 years after the West imposes sanctions, Russia becomes a high-income nation. So it seems like these sanctions have kind of backfired. Something to keep in mind. What else is happening in the economic struggle around the world? Well, Republic of Congo announces plans to join BRICS following a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Okay, so BRICS is expanding. BRICS, of course, being an economic union, it is growing. Certain countries, certain leaders of certain countries who are in charge of how those resources are allocated are saying, you know what? Our resources would be better allocated, and we like the rules around resource allocation if we go somewhere else, if we align ourselves with a different set of rules as opposed to the United States and its allies. Just in, North Korea says it will send troops to Ukraine to fight alongside Russia. Okay, they're not exactly fighting. Okay, important context here. While troops are sent, they are construction and engineering units designated to rebuild, not fight. Okay, so they're not fighting. That's probably a good thing, but they're rebuilding, right? That's that economic piece, because an economy and a military are complementary, right? If your economy is really good, it's not going to last unless you have a military to defend it. And similarly, if your military is really strong, it's not going to last unless you have an economy to support it. So the two are very closely connected. And here we have another country aligning with Russia and its economic decisions. A military coup d'etat is taking place in Bolivia. Right now, tanks and armed forces are deployed to the capital, La Paz. The president of Bolivia has denounced the irregular movements of the army, but get this, Bolivia has recently expressed a serious interest in joining BRICS. So BRICS is expanding all over the entire globe. Bolivia was also among the first nations to announce the end of diplomatic relations with Israel over its war in Gaza. So again, we have a country, right, which controls resources saying, we're not going to align with another group because of how it uses its resources. We're going to align with this other group. So right now we're seeing countries all over the entire world choosing sides, right? And they're economic sides, but closely related with military sides. Southeast Asia in BRICS is good for the global order. The club's expansion affirms the Global South's hedging strategy and sends a message to the great powers. Okay, from that article, a vital region in the global south, Southeast Asia, has long been missing from BRICS. Okay, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. As BRICS gelled and grew from its first summit in 2009, the region's states watched from the sidelines. One of them, Indonesia, seriously considered joining last year at the Johannesburg summit, but ultimately chose to stay away. Last year in 2023, BRICS decided to expand to 11 members by inviting Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Argentina later declined the invitation, and Saudi Arabia has not yet decided. Now, Malaysia and Thailand have announced that they will apply for BRICS membership. Okay, so you can see all these countries choosing sides. They like the economic rules of BRICS, or at least they think they'll be able to be better represented in BRICS than they would be anywhere else. So very interesting trend. The consequences of an expanding BRICS on a great power competition are sometimes misunderstood in zero-sum terms. I completely agree. So an economy fundamentally is a positive-sum game. Anytime you have two economic actors, whether they're individuals or countries, choosing to cooperate, they both are better off than without having cooperated. So it's a positive-sum game. Both parties are better off. Whereas war, on the other hand, is a negative-sum game. Both parties are worse off. They use resources to destroy resources, whereas an economy uses resources to create resources. So while you do have a positive-sum game in the economy and a negative-sum game in war, it doesn't mean that they equate to a zero-sum game in total. In fact, life itself is a positive-sum game. We tend to get better off over time, which is why we even have the luxury to sit here and talk about this today. We are much better off than we were several hundred years ago. So it's definitely a positive-sum game, and I'm optimistic that positive economic interactions will outpace those negative ones or sanctions or wars, but time will tell. Time will tell. Here are 10 SCO countries ready to ditch the US dollar for trade. So ditching the US dollar is another related theme here. The dollar, of course, is the world reserve currency used for so much of trade around the world, but a lot of countries are getting rid of it because they want to pursue other economic opportunities. They want to use their resources differently. From that article, the SCO 2024 summit is currently being held in Kazakhstan, and the 10 member countries are participating in the event. China is pushing for de-dollarization and is trying its best to convince other SCO countries to ditch the US dollar for trade. So by the way, the SCO is an abbreviation for Shanghai Cooperation Organization that was formed in 2001. And one other thing from that article, 10 countries look to trade in local currencies, not the US dollar. China is serious about the de-dollarization agenda and is discussing the prospects at every summit it attends. Every summit it attends. This is like top of mind for China. Very, very important. Get rid of the US dollar. If China convinces the SCO to ditch the US dollar, 10 countries will fall in line and use local currencies. And here are the 10 countries: Belarus, China, India, Iran, Russia, and 5 stands. Russia and China are already in the process of de-dollarization. So it's happening, something to be aware of. India and Russia meet to discuss de-dollarization. This happened this morning, July 8th. So these talks are happening, getting rid of the US dollar. BRICS to accept local currencies for fish exports and sideline the US dollar. This is just a proposal from Russia, but it seems likely that the other countries will adopt it. So fishing exports, agriculture, the BRICS countries are representing a growing percentage of agricultural land around the world. And I believe already 50% of the fishing industry globally, that's economic resources, right? And they want to choose how they use those economic resources and how they allocate them and how they price them. And they're not interested in using the US dollar. It's just not in their best interest anymore. Here are 3 ways that BRICS have started the de-dollarization process. I'm going to read them for you from this article.
Hi, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for subscribing and mention that if you'd like to help our channel, please consider my company, GoldSilver.com, the next time you buy precious metals. We're one of the most trusted names in the industry. Our prices are sharp, delivery is fast, and we have an insiders program where you find out exactly what I'm doing with my own investments. Thanks for making GoldSilver.com your dealer, and now back to the video.
Read them for you from this article. Settling payments in local currencies. The BRICS members are reworking bilateral trade deals and setting cross-border transactions in local currencies, not the US dollar. They are showing other countries how de-dollarization needs to be done. Convincing other countries to ditch the US dollar. Russia and China are on a world tour on de-dollarization, convincing other developed countries to start settling trade in local currencies. They are educating developed nations on the need to strengthen their native economies and boost their currencies on the global stage. And number 3, integrate new payment systems without the US dollar. BRICS member countries are also integrating new payment mechanisms for the smooth functioning of local currency transactions. The new payment system will not include the US dollar for transactions, thus forging ahead in the de-dollarization agenda. So I can't help but look at these 3 reasons and think to myself, none of this would have to be done if the countries of the world were already using gold. If every country already used gold, you wouldn't even have to decide, do we want to continue using some other country's currency, or should we start using our own, or maybe the currency of the country we're trading with? That question wouldn't even be a question because you would all be using gold. So you wouldn't have to decide if you want to settle payments in local currencies or foreign currencies or whatever. You wouldn't have to convince another country to ditch the currency that it's using because it's using the same one as you. It's using gold. And you wouldn't have to integrate new payment systems that, don't use, country X's, currency, because you just use gold. So it would solve every problem. Furthermore, if every country used gold, you wouldn't have to worry about exchange rates. You wouldn't have to worry about probably a lot of the sanctions. You wouldn't have to worry about pricing oil or fish or whatever in a certain currency. It would just be in gold. It would just be in gold. It would solve so many problems, and it would further increase the possibility for economic transactions, which is that positive sum game that is life itself. So if we all use the same money, same currency, and if it were gold, it would just completely eliminate all of these problems immediately. And speaking of gold, Nigerian officials decided to repatriate the country's gold in April, quote, to mitigate risks associated with the weakening U.S. economy. Nigerian officials also said bringing gold home would reflect the country's self-reliance. By bringing its gold reserves back within its borders, Nigeria not only asserts greater control over its financial assets, but also demonstrates prudence in managing economic risks amidst global uncertainties. Exactly. So those geopolitical uncertainties that translate into military uncertainties and, of course, economic uncertainties, right? A lot of that can be eliminated by being on a gold standard and keeping control of it yourself. Nigeria isn't alone in wanting to control its gold reserves and bring them home. India recently repatriated 100 tons of gold from vaults in the UK. Yes, it did. So why did RBI, the Royal Bank of India, move 100 tons of gold from the UK to domestic vaults? Well, it's all the things we're talking about. It's having better control. It's mitigating all of these geopolitical uncertainties. It's hedging against various risks. And one of the explanations they give here is logistical efficiency and diversified storage. I don't know, sounds a little wishy-washy. There are much bigger reasons at play. And by the way, this is the largest such repatriation since the early 1990s. So this is a pretty big deal, and we see multiple countries doing it, and it's a trend. It's a growing trend. Countries repatriating gold in wake of sanctions against Russia, study finds. This is from July 9th, 1 year ago, 2023. So this article is a year old, but you've got to keep in mind that these trends don't play out over the span of a week or 2 weeks. They take years, 5 or 10 years, or even longer. And this is a growing trend that we've seen for a while. Here's a chart from that article. This is a survey of central banks and their gold holdings. You can see here in the top category, physical gold held in foreign central banks or foreign bullion banks, around 73, 74% with 2020 holdings, investing now, and in 5 years' time. So not a big change there of physical gold held in foreign central banks. However, the big trend, the big shift across these 3 categories from 2020 to now to 5 years from now is physical gold held in your own country. So central bankers are saying the physical gold held in our own country is going to go from 50% of us thinking it's important to 68% of us to 74%. So this is a very big trend, 50% to 74%. Yeah. So looking forward 5 years, or I guess it'd be 4 years from today, a large percentage of central bankers are saying we are going to hold the gold inside our own borders, not in someone else's country. So this is pretty big. And of course, no surprise here, a relatively small reliance on paper gold, right? They want the actual physical thing. And 74% here over the next 5 years, this is as high as any category is, 74%. So That tells you something. Physical gold. And of course, this is going to help them protect against anything: military conflicts, economic uncertainty, foreign exchange risk, and of course, inflation, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a country or an individual, inflation is a killer. And that's the theme of our meme of the day. Is inflation affecting your family? 124%. 124% of people said no, and 195% said yes. Checks out. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.